was a veteran, and we saved his life. I mean, we knocked on the door. This is our like 6th or 7th meeting we had with him, and he was moaning, and we pushed open the door, and he was laying on the ground. He hurt himself. He couldn't get up.
Welcome to the Big Brand Theory podcast by Blackwood Creative.
So Drew, tell me a bit about yourself.
First and foremost, father of 2. Love my daughters very much. Pretty much everything I do is for them. I'm in real estate. I help sellers who are distressed get out of uncomfortable situations. Here in Michiana, Niles, Elkhart, surrounding Michiana, 6 counties surrounding Michiana. Avid tech user, and that's pretty much it, honestly.
I'm right there with you with the tech part.
Yeah.
For sure. Worked in real estate, not on the real estate like realtor side, but the media side. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole different industry for sure. It's very, very different. And so in your specific industry, you're not a realtor.
I'm not a realtor.
Right.
Nope. I'm just.
And that's kind of a confusing thing for some people when they potentially like want to work with you, and then they find out that you're not a realtor, but then you're also able to still help them with their home.
Sure. So we're classified as private investors. So we go in, we identify pain points that sellers are going through, whether it be financial distress, physical distress, emotional distress. It could be a divorce situation. It could be the house has a ton of deferred maintenance. It could be an assortment of things, and our job is to go in there and figure out a solution to their problem. And they welcome us into their home with zero expectations from us, and we do the same with the sellers. We simply just go in there, have a open, friendly conversation, eventually moving towards the more emotional side of things, mm-hmm. and we help them figure out the solutions. Now, realtors are amazing. They help sellers in a vast array of different areas. Private investors are unhinged. They're not, where we can do how we want and where we want. And a lot of these, people that we help, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 months. And realtors, especially with the housing market boom this past year, they're overloaded and they have lots going on, and they have hundreds of listings and mm-hmm. things like that. So it's a little bit refreshing for them to have an investor come in, give them the time of day, work through their issues, offer up multiple options versus just listing it on the market one and done. We've done creative financing, creative wraps. We've done lots of different options. Whatever is best for the seller, then we let the seller decide what's best for them.
Right. And I think that's the part that is kind of misconstrued, is like, we've talked about this a little bit before, mm-hmm. where like there's almost a stigma in wholesaling real estate.
There is. Where
like people have this like, you're almost poaching, right? Like they think that that's what it is, but from the stories you've told me and the people that you've helped, that is almost the direct opposite.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that has to do with the person. So the person who's representing the company, or the quote unquote investor, or whoever, it depends on how they want to approach a seller. Realtors, there is a stigma against what we do, but it's because they might have heard something from somebody else about a bad connection or a bad deal that went sour. We've had shortcomings, and we've explained it. We've never had any issues, but sometimes everything doesn't work out the way you plan it to in life in general. But there is a stigma against what we do because people think that we're taking advantage of people, whereas we're not. I personally don't. I go out there and I go out of my way abundantly to help these people.
Right, and that's the part that when you were telling me about some of the stories of like, helping people get out of these homes because they're older, mm-hmm. or they get to a point where they don't really know what to do with the home mm-hmm. when they're about to pass or anything like that. And it almost feels like there's a lot of times where you want to have somebody like you rather than a real estate mm-hmm. agent. Like you want somebody that comes in that has that conversation that's a little bit harder and less about the home and more about the situation.
That's 100%. It's not always about the home itself. It's about what happens after they sell the home? Where do they go? We help with replacement. We help them move. We've helped people move out of state to get into a chemical dependency, like a rehab. The gentleman was a veteran, and we saved his life. I mean, we knocked on the door. This is our like 6th or 7th meeting we had with him, and he was moaning, and we pushed open the door, and he was laying on the ground. He had hurt himself. He couldn't get up. So if he would have been laying there for another couple of days, he may not be here. So we called a nurse friend of ours. She came over and checked his vitals, and gave him we gave him Pediasures and Insures, not Pediasure, Insures, and got him back up to healthy. And she checked his vitals and made sure he was okay. He didn't want to go to the hospital. He didn't have the money to do it. So we called in Lexi, and Lexi helped us out, and she came right on the phone call. I said, I need you here now. He didn't want an ambulance, but we definitely changed his life for sure. Now, from the last conversation I had with his son, he's in Connecticut. He's doing well. He finished his rehab program. He got a job. He's loving life.
It's amazing to me of sometimes as a veteran and hearing that, like, you don't notice the world around you sometimes, right? Like, you don't see for what it is or what's behind closed doors a lot of times, and especially dealing with housing and all that. Like, every house is different, every person is different. So like, you go into that context of like, somebody's in a poor spot and they're behind on their mortgage and they don't have enough money to pay for medical bills, and then they fall and they get hurt, and it's like, what part of that situation would a realtor have to do with anything?
Right. Well, I think that boils down to human compassion. I think realtors have compassion. Realtors have and show empathy, and they go out of their way and they do a lot. And I give realtors a lot of props. But there's not a similar stigma, but there's also a stigma with realtors. Some people, for whatever reason, don't want to work with realtors. We don't know why. They don't really talk about it. They're just, I'd rather just sell it cash as is and just walk away from my problem. These these folks are looking to have a quick and easy, convenient solution to their problems versus listing it on the market and having 10 showings and open houses and getting the house cleaned up. And a lot of these houses that we deal with need work, so they don't show very well in pictures. They don't show very well in an open house. So a lot of these people don't have an outlet until we come in and say, hey, what can we do to help you?
Right. And you've cleaned out homes and removed hoarding and stuff like that, and then you get to a point where the property then sells, and if not gives them a clean slate, potentially puts money in their pocket, and they get to move on with their life without that stress.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that nobody really sees a lot with the stigma, that people think that, oh, they're literally driving through neighborhoods and checking some tax record, like, that person's behind on their mortgage, I'm gonna come in and buy their house for half the price and then make money in my pocket. And it's like, that's not really what goes on there.
It's based off of everybody's individual intentions. If you go into a situation with ill intentions, you're gonna be chastised for it. I go into every home with an open heart. I usually wear my hat that says love on it, just to kind of break the ice and let them know that we're here to help. We're not gonna screw you over. We're not gonna do you wrong. We're here to help, and we're gonna help you. We're gonna help connect you with the investors who have the means and the know-how and the crews behind them to get your house back to marketable standards and take you out of the mix, so that you don't have to deal with any of this stuff. There's no runs to Menards. There's no lifting a hammer. There's no taking out a dumpster full of trash. There's none of that. It's really just quick and easy, and we always give them the option on the number. So they tell us what they want, and our job is to find our way to that number as fast as possible. If sometimes the number we can do, sometimes we can't. It all depends on what the number is.
Right. And that's the part too, is like, if somebody's lived in that house for 25 years and they're behind on their mortgage and they paid all this money and they essentially are having a clean slate, that's hard to realize. But when you get behind, and it's either you can have a clean slate or you can have a mark on your record and never be able to basically get a mortgage again. Yeah. That's a good trade-off.
Foreclosures stay on your credit for 10 years. And almost every time you go through the foreclosure process, there's fees from attorneys and debtor creditors, and there's just fees after fees after fees. We'll come in, and we did one in Knollwood and on Asheville. They had lived in the house for 24 years, raised a family. The kids were in college. The COVID really hurt, and COVID's a big thing with all this too, but COVID really hurt their ability to earn because they're both school teachers and school was in virtual. So, their mortgage was high. It was almost $500,000 house, and they didn't know what to do. And I explained to them that I'll do my very best, and I did. And we had a bump in the road, but we ended up closing, and I saved them 10 years of credit hardship. We got them all caught up, and I put $5,000 in $7,000 in their pocket. Like, they walked away with money versus it going to a foreclosure auction, having a 10-year stain on their credit, not being able to get into an apartment or a house because they've got that red dot on their credit. And I get Christmas cards from them. We're in the process of flipping it with an investor we're working with, Bridget, and they're coming in a couple weeks to see the final reveal. We transformed the house. Bridget transformed the house. I helped her a little bit, but she did most of the work.
Which is, I think that's part of it, right? Like, you go down that road and people get so bought into, they're like, I've done 20 years of payments on this, and I'm about to walk away from it with nothing. And you're like, I understand that's a problem, and I get it, and it sucks, but at the same time, it's like, you can walk away from this with a clean slate and move forward and potentially get into another property or apartment or whatever. But if you don't do this, you're going to lose your house to the bank, and they're just going to flip it as it is to somebody that's just going to buy it for scrap and then invest a bunch of money, and then the flippers, especially in our area, they're buying low and selling high. That's literally the whole job. But what I've run into, especially being in that industry, is I'll go through and people will run through a property. We're talking like 30 days, complete flip, like down to the stud almost, and like it can be done. But what I've found is that if you go to somebody like you who takes the time and spends 2 months, 3 months and does it right, it contributes to the housing industry where somebody's going to buy that home and it's going to be an actually good home. There's too many times I've walked into a house ready to take photography and I'm like, oh, like literally the sink is not installed. It's just sitting in the hole.
Yeah. Or
Or there's no water ran, or literally there's like water as a puddle in the bathroom, like somebody left the water on or whatever. And it's things like that, or like tile work that like literally has grout missing inside the shower that you can see water damage and all that. It's just little things like that I think it comes down to it, where working with a company like yours, where you get the investment of time and accountability versus like, well, it is what it is. I'm going to give it back to the bank and try to have a clean slate. It's like, that's literally not a clean slate. Like that is a plan that will cause you more stress than you're already in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that people miss. So working with somebody like you and your company, like that makes total sense of why you would do that, because even if you don't flip it, like even if you get out from underneath it, you get an investor and they come in and they buy the property and you're not doing the flip, but as a company, you still have to make money, and I get that. But you're not going out of your way to gouge it. You're not going out of your way to be like, well, we can flip this. We're going to need $85,000 in investment up front to do this. It's not the same game.
No, we don't pay attention to the numbers. The numbers it's numbers driven. It's real estate. There's market, there's standards, there's things. You have to know your neighborhood values and stuff like that. But when it comes down to what my company gets, it doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter what we earn. That house, the biggest deal I've ever done, it was $400,000, and that was with Bridget on Asheville. I personally walked away with $0. I lost like $3,000 between 6 dumpsters, clean out crews, like all the things, moving 20 years of possessions, helping them move into I had all my crews move all their stuff into storage units for them because they're elder. So we went, and it was weeks of work, and I lost money, but it wasn't about the money. It was about solving their issue. Because I walked in there, and from the first time I met Aaron and Jeff, I told them, I said, hey, I'm going to do everything I possibly can to get you out of this situation. And in that scenario, I didn't make a penny. I lost money. And it doesn't matter, because I kept my word, and they got out of the foreclosure. We worked with the creditor. We negotiated with the attorneys. We did everything we possibly could. And they had refinanced this house like 5 years earlier. So they were like double deep. So there's no equity. They lived in it for 20 years. There's no equity in the home because they refinanced it, took out the money, and then defaulted on both the original mortgage and the secondary mortgage.
Right.
So there was no equity for them to have.
There was nothing to fall back on at all.
Right.
Like they couldn't even pull equity to essentially work with the bank to figure that out. Yeah.
They were in a tough spot, and there's lots of people out there that are in tough spots, and until you get to know the sellers and hear their stories and shed some tears and give some hugs, you don't really know what they need until it gets to that tough conversation of, hey, what can you do to help me? And I will tell them I'll do everything I possibly can. And that's when I reach out to my investors that I work with locally and out of state, saying, hey, you could be brought into this deal and help somebody's life, and then also making earnings on a fix and flip or a buy and hold rental. And the investors love that part of it too, that they're by association, they're helping somebody else, not just making a penny, they're actually helping people. And they always ask me for the story. What's the story with this one, Drew? They say, what's the story? It's either a foreclosure, a divorce, a bankruptcy, they broke their back or something happened. You know? So there's always a story.
So rewind away from just the industry and what you provide, but like as a business, I mean, how did you get into wholesaling? Like, did you jump into this, or was it more like something just dawned on you and you're like, I just want to do this?
Quite honestly, I was just, browsing the internet and looking for different business models that I could scale up to and do. And I've always wanted to get into real estate. I know real estate's, somewhere that you can get into and create some type of wealth creation for your kids' and your own kids. So I looked into it and I found this was the barrier to entry into this part of real estate was easy, but very technical, and you had to have connections and networking with title companies and other realtors, and you have to learn. There's a lot of stuff to learn about real estate. But before that, I had owned a car dealership and I had a service center. I was an auto mechanic for many years, and I loved it, but it just became difficult, getting older, and my hands didn't work as fast as they used to. So I got into real estate, and I don't think I'll ever switch. I might add some things and do other things, but I don't think I'll ever get out of real estate because there's too many people that need help.
So I feel like that is a testament of finding your calling.
Yeah.
Like, you care, you want to help people, and in what more of an impact can you make outside of like medical, I guess, for an actual human being, but housing, right? Like, housing is literally like one of the main core 3 things in life that you need, right? So like, I think about that, and your company, Modern Property Solutions, you guys go out of your way, you help people with housing, but also it seems like you help people more so, especially with the veteran in the home and getting them to rehab and that kind of stuff. So it seems like there's a lot more to it than just wholesaling real estate for you.
People should always come first. It doesn't matter what industry, what business model, whatever it is, if you put people first, because every business is people driven. There's really no business models that I know of that don't require a human touch. So if you are able to be personable and help people, and you put them first, and that's our slogan for our own company, is people should always come first. And I truly believe that. And if you do that and put people first, put money aside, put situations aside, if you just help somebody, you may not make a return, whether it be money or whatever, on that deal, but in life will give it back to you tenfold. Because I am literally, my entire company and my staff and everybody goes out of their way to help these people because there's nowhere else they can turn. So we are the last stop because we solve their issue. Once we solve the issue, they can go on about their lives and have a new chapter that they can open. People move out of state, people move out of the country, people move in with their family relatives, they do all kinds of stuff. It's really left up to them, and that's the beauty of the whole situation. Is once the house sells, once the house and that burden is taken off their plate, they're free to do whatever they like. They can do whatever they want. They can follow a dream or start a business or retire, whatever they want to do.
I think that's the part, again, that people sort of misconstrue about that, right? Like, with the whole stigma of real estate in general, like especially now in this industry and how it's booming, and and we all know that like it's inevitably going to drop. It always does. It's a huge hilly mess, but especially with, at least in our area, and you have where there's a lot of people that have family members that live in home, and like older relatives or like parents and stuff like that. And I think about that in your industry and your business, and how you help those people even in those circumstances find new life, right? Like,
give them a second chance.
And I think that's like majorly inspiring. Like, that's not just a business and like, yeah, we're doing well, we're making money.
Yeah.
Like, that's more like, dude, I worked with like 50 people this year and I changed their life every single time.
Every single time. Every single time we change our life. And we don't push for reviews and we don't push for testimonials. It really is at the end of every deal, at closing at the title company, it's either a hug and or tears and or thank yous. I mean, I've never had one person that was upset with the structure of the deal, because if they were, I'll identify it immediately and say, what are we doing wrong? And they always have good things to say about us. A good portion of my business is referral. So like I'll help this seller on this street, and then 2 streets away, the guys they know each other, and
Right.
like, hey, how can I get you guys to come in and tell me what my house is worth and to buy it and help me get out of this situation.
That's the part I was going to ask next, is how do you go about necessarily finding this stuff? Because obviously there's people that have situations,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But not a lot of time do they know that even this option exists, let
Yeah.
alone, like, they're always going to default. Like, if somebody mentions, I was really thinking about selling my house, 9 times out of 10, other family members are going to be like, oh, I have a great realtor,
Mm-hmm.
or I have this going on. But like, it might not be that simple of like, let's just sell it.
Right.
It might be, it needs more work, but like, maybe I just want a clean slate, because by the time I sell it and then pay everything back, I'm still going to owe money, or
Sure.
whichever it is. But I think about that a lot, is like, man, it's not like, that is a business model that not only works, but like is changing for, at least in the US for sure. But like, you don't have that often. You don't have businesses that will go out of their way and like look at it. Like 9 times out of 10, you're a number,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially at franchises and corporations and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
even some small businesses, sometimes you're just a number, and like, they have a bottom line that they have to meet too. But it's nice to know that in your mind, it's helping the people first. So in a good context, it's like, yeah, I didn't make a lot of money on this deal, or I lost money on this deal,
Mm-hmm.
but I've done 3 other deals that I made plenty of money on that can cover that, and I still managed to help both those people.
Right. When we go into these homes, we talk to the sellers, we make it very clear that we don't take a penny from them. They don't pay us anything. The investors that we work with, they pay us for our time, our marketing, our resources, our clean out services. We deliver a home to them, ready for them to go in there and do what they do. Excuse me. They'll go in there and they'll paint, carpet, flooring, layout changes, new roofs, new windows. They'll do all the big things that the seller couldn't do. And they see potential. So the people that I work with, the number one requirement that I have for the seller or the investors that I work with is you have to be able to have a vision and a plan. Mm-hmm. Because you walk into a house, you should be able to see the potential, whether I touched it and cleaned it up and did a deep clean on it or not. And 2, you have to have a plan and the money to be able to do what your plan entails.
Right.
So these investors, they know the game. They know what I do. They know what I need them to bring to the table, and my sellers know what I bring to the table. Mm-hmm. So it works out really well. Not all of them are perfect. Not all of them are perfect. We try. Some people, they say we don't want to work with you. No problem. Keep us open. Keep an open mind. We're available anytime you need us, and we never push. We don't have any ulterior motives other than to help them, and that's strange in this world today.
Right. I was going to say, generally people would be like, they hear a no and they're like, well, now it's my mission to get a yes, and it's like, sometimes
we just
you
make
just
sure
let it be a no, and like, we're here when you need us, kind of thing.
Just got to make sure that they're informed, that they know the process, and explain to them, help them see the big picture, help them see what happens after the house sells. What's your next step in life? Well, do you need help getting there? What can we do to help? We're not life coaches, or, we don't have, I don't know how to explain it. We just go in and try to help people. There's really not much more that can be said to that point of, what we do for the sellers. It really is just, how can we help you? And if it's within our wheelhouse and we have the connections or the network to make it happen, we almost always do.
Right.
Which is awesome.
That's the thing that I think about a lot, especially in real estate, is like, I see it. I know that there's people that are selling their homes, especially in this industry right now, with everything being so high and everything selling so fast, and like, it's really hard to get into a home. And that's the part, that last one is the hard part for people, is like, they're like, oh, my house is worth triple of what it was when I first bought it. I should totally sell. And then it's like,
you'd be surprised at how many people don't know that. We
Where-
tell them like, hey, you're asking this much money, but it's worth more. Right? We give them more. We help the investor. We ask the investors to pay more for the property that the person was offering. We had a person that said, I'll take $55,000 for my house. And I looked at my partner at the time, Steve, and I said, that's a great deal. Then I looked at the neighboring values and I said, well, he should be getting somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000 for this house, the way it sits right now, because it wasn't bad. There wasn't a lot of deferred maintenance. It was just very dirty. I think it had fleas in it and it had termite damage in the base, but that was minimal. We caught it kind of right in the middle, and we ended up offering him $85,000, and he took it. So he got $30,000 more than he thought he was ever going to get, and he was ecstatic.
And
I think we walked away with like $2,500.
that's the part that I think people, especially with in the housing market, is like sometimes people go into these investment properties, and if they're not knowledgeable about true damage that can happen and like deferred maintenance and all that, like they see, oh, there's a crack in the foundation, I'd never buy that house. Or, oh, there's termites, oh, that means that it's horrible. And you're the opposite. You like look at that and you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. I'll handle that.
I'm able to scope a house in 20 minutes, top to bottom. So that's because of my background in construction and just being hands-on mechanic. I could walk into a house and look at a structural issue on a house, and that's the one thing the realtor couldn't do. They can't sell a house, with structural damage unless it was 100% disclosed. Well, we disclose it to our investors, but my investors and myself know how to fix it. A lot of people don't know that it really is just jacking the house up just a quarter inch, replace that rim joist and put a new one in, or replace the column with the stone and done. It's really not as big of an issue as most people think, but these sellers say, they know there's an issue with the foundation, that it slopes, the kitchen slopes or a bedroom slopes, and they think that they're stuck. They're not. I mean, It's a house. Most everything on a house can be repaired.
I like that. That's a part of almost your business practice, right? Like, it's not just the home that's getting repaired, it's also your situation.
For sure, 100%. These people, my wife, if Stephanie was here, she's my wife, if she was here and she saw me from the beginning 4.5 years ago when I first started this, and I fumbled and I learned and made mistakes and learned my lessons, and now it's like I'll work a 10-hour day and I'll come home and the first thing I do is tell her about the situation. Like, you will never guess what we were able to help this seller escape. And she loves it. She loves seeing me happy, and that's what makes me happy because, I think in the end we're all judged at some point. And the amount of people that I help in my lifetime is going to be part of that judgment. And I think if I keep doing the way I'm doing it and keep staying on the path that I'm on, I think, in the course of the next 20, 30 years, I've helped thousands of people. And I couldn't ask for a better, assessment of myself.
It's kind of like a life goal for you.
It is.
Like really just helping as many people as possible. That's really inspiring, man. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's religious per se. It's just being a good person, just being human and compassionate and showing empathy and going out of your way and being creative. Networking is a big part of it.
Yeah,
I've rooted myself in Michiana pretty deep. I know pretty much all the players and all the people that are in real estate locally. And I've got a good rapport with all of them. They all know my story. They all have seen my growth, and they all kind of want to be brought in on the action and brought in on helping other people, because that's really the first thing I tell them. Like, if you can't help them, I have no spot for you in my network. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. I need you to be able to help me help them. If you can help me help them, we can get along famously.
That's awesome.
Anybody that's listening to your podcast and anybody that's subscribing to your podcast, if they're interested in real estate, it's not hard to get into. The barrier to entry is actually limited. Getting certified as a realtor is a whole nother game. It's a whole nother thing. And if they want to go that route, I'd encourage them to go that route and go to the real estate school and get their certifications and learn their fiduciary duties and all the things that encompass a realtor's license. But you don't have to have a license to get into real estate. But I will say this, you do have to have compassion and empathy and be there to help people, not take advantage of people. That's the only requirement that I have for myself. And anybody else going into real estate would probably be best suited going into the real estate model with an open mind and an open heart.